Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yousefi.
Here, maybe have your report, please.
The agenda for the May 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, May 3rd, 2007, on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay. What's next, please?
For Redevelopment Agency, there are minutes, and is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the minutes will stay approved as submitted. Before we go to oral communication, I have two presentations I want to do. At this time, may I have Robert Townsend and Tor Johnson and Rich Wells to come to the podium. As you know, about a couple of months ago, our city workers in GTV6 and also graphics worked so diligently to put together a program called Invest in Glendale. And I will tell you that they worked tirelessly for hours and hours. And of course, yeah, you're right. It is Johansson. Sorry. Somebody just written it wrong way. So I just wanted to show my appreciation. I know I'm one of those people who has a tendency to chew up the staff when they don't do a right job, but I strongly believe when they do an exemplary work, you need to thank them and appreciate them. Consequently, I have a little award for you, which hasn't been given out since Eileen Gibbons' times, so I thought I dug it up, and Mr. Lanzafame was nice enough to find it and bring it out, so I would read this. To GTV6 is being recognized by the Glendale Redevelopment Agency for outstanding efforts with producing, directing, designing, and editing the Invest in Glendale video. Additionally, on the day of the event, GTV6 staff assisted with the presentation of the video. Your support in helping market the city of Glendale to investors and business professionals demonstrates your commitment to helping improve our community. Your efforts were vital to the success of the event, and your valuable assistance was greatly appreciated by all. The Glendale Redevelopment Agency recognizes and commends the efforts of GTV6 for providing outstanding production efforts for the Invest in Glendale event. Mr. Johansson. Thank you, sir. I spelled it right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And you may say a few words if you wish.
Thank you, Agency Chair Yousefi, and we really appreciate this recognition. I must tell you that this video was truly a team effort. Not only the folks at Channel 6, but Mr. Lanzafame and his staff worked hour after hour on that video. And I must tell you, I think it was truly a team effort. I think the folks from the graphics department also did an outstanding job. This is truly, I think, one of the finest videos that the city has ever produced, and I think it's something we can all be very proud of.
Thank you. At this time, I would also like to invite Mr. Lopez and Ms. Pittman to the podium, please. And this is in recognition of the graphics department, who also worked very diligently to prepare all those nice little booklets that people took home. And the other thing was that they also prepared a very small booklet that actually fits in the packet that we will be handing out to people after we get it next week with the DVDs, which is a smaller version, but it's nicely designed to a point that somebody like me with has some vision issues can at least read it. So I want to thank you especially for that. And this is another award to you from the Redevelopment Agency. It says Glendale is being recognized. The City of Glendale Graphic Department is being recognized by the Glendale Redevelopment Agency for outstanding efforts with designing, marketing, and printing the Invest in Glendale booklet. Your support in helping market the City of Glendale to investors and business professionals demonstrates your commitment to helping improve our community. Your efforts were vital to the success of the event, and your valuable assistance was greatly appreciated by all. The Glendale Redevelopment Agency recognizes and commends the effort of the City of Glendale's Graphic Department for providing design, marketing, and printing efforts for the Invest in Glendale.
I'm sure.
On behalf of all of us in graphics, and especially on behalf of Dean, he's shy. You'd never know that if you worked with him, but thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, just one extra note. While Dean and the fellows here are being recognized, this really was an effort by all of them. While we had Rob and Tor and Henry doing this DVD, the rest of the staff was covering the meetings and other events, same thing in graphics. So we really do appreciate the efforts of all of the staff in both of those departments.
It was a team effort, and let's not forget all the staff members from the Redevelopment Agency who made all the they went out there and found out who is the one who's going to speak, made all the appointments, and did all of that. So thank you very much. Thank you. What's next, please?
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Redevelopment Agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and a report.
Okay, I have a lot of cards, but none of them are for oral communication. Anybody wants to speak on oral communication? That's not on the agenda. I don't see anybody running up. Oral communication is closed. Next, please.
Next item is the business agenda, and at 6A is a public hearing. Director of Development Services regarding Armenian Society of Los Angeles, ASLA, development project located at 117 South Louise Street. At 6A1 is resolution certifying and adopting a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring program for the project. At 6A2 is motion approving Stage 2 design proposal for the project, subject to comments and conditions from the city's principal urban designer and the agency. At 6A3 is motion approving a parking exception for 256 spaces with conditions.
Okay, and with that, I'll go to Mr. Starbird.
And I'll go to Phil Lansfame, Director for the staff report. Phil?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, just a short introduction. You last heard about this project or heard this item on March 27th. We do have 3 items in front of you: the environmental review, the design review, and a parking exception for the Armenian Society of Los Angeles. On March 27th, we started through the design review process and the parking exception. And midway through the environmental review, the applicant asked to withdraw their application so that they might go back and provide some more detail in their project description. Subsequent to that, there was a recirculation of that document. That's brings us to where we are today. We still have those 3 items in front of you for your consideration. We have provided each of you a larger packet. We hope that we have been able to tab them for easy reference for all of the items that might come up. So for the rest of the staff report, I will turn it over to Deputy Director Dave Ahern for the staff report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, as Mr. Lansfane has said, the project before you today is the Armenian Society of Los Angeles Cultural Center located at 117, or proposed to be located at 117 South Louise Street between Harvard and Broadway. There are 3 actions being proposed before the agency today: approval of the final design review, approval of a 256-space parking exception, and approval or adoption of a mitigated negative declaration as the environmental document for the project. With the agency's permission, staff would like to proceed with the design review component first. In terms of our presentation, not in terms of adoption. We recognize you adopt the environmental first. But in terms of sequencing the presentation, we'd like to review the environmental or the design review with you first, then review the parking exception. As we've gone through those in our March 27th presentation with you in some detail, we think that'll be a shorter presentation, and then the environmental review will be a longer discussion, and we have the project architect here, we have the environmental consultants, the traffic consultant is here, and staff, of course, is here to answer any questions that you may have. So if that's okay with the agency, we'll proceed in that order.
Before you go on, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have cell phones, I would appreciate it if you either turn it off or put it on vibrate mode. And with that, please go on with your design review issue.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, the project as it's proposed was approved for Stage 1 design review in May of 2006. It was presented to you again in March of this year, March 27th, and it is presented again today. The design of the building reflects a classical design, consistent for what we expect in institutional buildings such as schools, churches, government buildings that have that classic design that have a sense of dominance on the land, a sense of permanence conveyed through the architecture, a sense of stability and reliability that we expect from institutional organizations. So staff believes this design speaks to all those issues and represents what the Armenian Society of Los Angeles is in that regard. It's a community-serving organization that's been in Glendale for 45 years. In terms of the project itself, it sits on a 15,000 square foot lot that's currently improved as a surface parking lot. The project is proposed or is allowed to have a 4-story structure. The applicant is proposing a 3-story structure. The project is allowed to have a building height of 65 feet. They are proposing a building height of 48.6 feet. The floor area ratio is proposed at 1.8 or 27,000 square feet. They're allowed to have a 2.5 floor area ratio, approximately 37,500 feet. They are required to have a 6-foot front setback. They are proposing an 11-foot 2-inch front setback. They're required to have 1,500 square feet of open space. They're providing over 2,500 square feet of open space. Rear setback is not required. In this case, they're providing a rear setback of 3 feet. They're required to provide 270 parking spaces. The applicant proposes to meet that parking requirement with 14 on-site spaces and 256 spaces in the marketplace garage located directly behind the site. From a site planning standpoint, that parking arrangement is a very traditional design, one that we in the city have a lot of experience with, where the building comes out to the street edge, the parking is located at the rear. Oftentimes it's public parking. It's a common site plan that we see in the downtown Mid-Brand area. You only have to look to businesses such as Porto's or Damon's where you'll see the surface parking in the rear. The same is true in Montrose, along Honolulu. It's public parking to the rear, private businesses to the front. So because of that, staff is very comfortable with this type of site plan. It's one that we have a lot of experience with, and we feel comfortable that it works. This is in the downtown specific plan, which requires ground floor uses to be either office or retail or residential. For this area, they are proposing office and retail with parking at the rear, which is allowed. The agency's previous review of the project requested that the applicant make some modifications, which they had done in our last presentation. We discussed those. They're providing a 1 foot 6 inch setback at either side at the ground level. At the second and third floor level, the project is set back 3 feet from the property line. They've eliminated the balustrades on the third floor at the east and west wing to reduce the vertical fenestration or elements to the building, simplifying the facade in that regard. Per the agency direction, they revised the site plan to increase the open public space at the front. That's accomplished by providing about 160 additional feet of hardscape along with bench seating at the entry. The agency requested that the fountain be illuminated at night, and the applicant will illuminate the fountain at night. Those are the key issues that we discussed in terms of design review. Of course, the project architect is here and staff is available if you'd like to ask any questions or have any further comments on the design review. Staff is recommending approval of the Stage 2 review.
Any questions on the architectural design? I have 2 questions. I think Mr. Quintero brought this up last time about designing the wall in such fashion so it would act as benches so people could sit there and wait in case they want to be dropped off and picked up. Has that taken place?
Yes.
And where are they located?
Is
that the curved part?
That's the current. If you look at the bulletin board, probably the site plan in the upper left-hand corner best illustrates it with the gray area, where that is a bench at the edge of the hardscape. So that planter is all bench now, and planting occurs behind it.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Okay. And we had also asked to have color chips, so we know what the colors are. Has the architect provided those?
The architect has provided those, and he's met with the city's urban planner, principal designer in the planning department, and verified the numbers on the color chips, and he has copies here for the agency members.
Okay. That's it. And the windows are what he's providing us, which was pellet windows?
That's correct.
Now, when we approve the design on this project, do we have to put the numbers that is in this, or this becomes a part of the record, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Right, so I don't have to put the numbers in. This is it.
Those specs will be incorporated as part of the record. That's correct.
Okay. And the redevelopment agency, Mr. Loomis, has checked with these, and these are consistent with the design and the color scheme?
That's my understanding. That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Loomis around?
He is not in the
Okay.
affirmative.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Mr. Najarian.
We've seen this design for some time, and it certainly was a big change from the very first design that we saw, the glass and steel structure. And the design sort of always rang a bell with me, and I didn't realize it till just recently that this design carries over the architectural cues from the United States Post Office, the Carlos Moorhead Post Office, just on Broadway. Mm-hmm. The main entry with the curving door and entryway, and the stonework all the way around it. So I think in that regard, it's somewhat keeping with both the neighborhood as well as you said, that sense of government buildings have that sense of belonging and stability. What were those other words you used?
Sense of permanence and reliability.
Permanence and reliability. So in that regard, I'm pleased with the design and the changes that the architect has made from the very beginning. And I think it's much more suitable to the neighborhood and to the character of Glendale as a whole.
Okay.
Okay, since there's no comments from my colleagues on the design issue, I think we kind of have dealt with all the elements. Let's move to the next item, please.
Okay. The next item is the parking exception. As proposed, the project has a parking requirement of 270 spaces per the code. The applicant, as I've said, proposes to meet that requirement with 14 on-site spaces and 256 spaces in the marketplace garage. This arrangement is per the agency's approved memorandum of understanding with the Armenian Society of Los Angeles. In that agreement, the agency agreed to provide the applicant with up to 300 spaces in that garage to meet their code-required parking. Since their requirement is less than 300, in this case, they need an additional 256. That's what the parking exception is for.
And with
And again, they still provide the spaces, and they pay for the spaces. These are not for free. They have access to the spaces in the marketplace garage, and that will satisfy their parking requirement, but people using the garage will pay the market rate for using it.
And one question that has been asked in the past is, if we do allow them the 256 parking spaces, are there ample parking spaces in the current garage to be able to absorb this 256 parking spaces?
It's a good question, Mr. Chairman. The city's traffic administrator and assistant administrator, as well as the environmental traffic consultant, have analyzed the parking. At peak usage, the marketplace garage with this 256 spaces would be about 91%. So there would still be, at peak usage, remaining 9 or 10% vacancy in the garage. It's also worth noting that one of the calculations that was done for the parking of the project was looking at the cafe portion as a fast food restaurant, and the applicant has told us that certainly the cafe will be available to their neighbors, but it's certainly not going to be operated at the same level as a fast food restaurant would be, where the parking requirement's significantly higher. So this is the worst-case parking scenario that's been analyzed, and we have ample parking to accommodate it. Now, and it was projected out into the future with additional uses coming online, like the DPSS building, linens and things moving back in, and things of that nature. As a,
Item.
Okay.
Move to the main event.
Move to the main event. The next item is the environmental review for the project. As you recall, we were here on March 27th, and we're proposing approval of a mitigated negative declaration for the project. The agency considered that, and there was some discussion primarily around issues of traffic and parking. At that time, at the conclusion of the discussion, the applicant chose to withdraw their application, and the agency agreed to allow that to occur. The applicant withdrew their application in order to clarify primarily the hours of operations, which were not spelled out on an individual basis in that analysis. Although they were analyzed that way, it wasn't described that way in the description, and so we allowed the applicant to redo the description and republish so that the community knows exactly what's being proposed, what the hours of operations are. Staff, following the agency's direction, made a above the normal effort to communicate regarding this project with the neighbors, specifically with the Presbyterian Church. We published the notices as required by law and by code. We also electronically sent copies of the notices to the church. We sent them copies of the mitigated neg deck when it was available, both by U.S. mail, electronically, and we gave them hard copies in person. We also followed up with them on several occasions with reminder notices on due dates for key milestones in this environmental review process. The recirculated mitigated negative declaration was available for a 20-day comment period. And the agency received one comment letter on the last day of the comment period from the Presbyterian Church. The clarifications that were in the MND, or mitigated negative declaration, primarily focused on hours of operation, and I'll quickly just review that. Uses such as the cafe, that as an individual use wasn't identified in terms of hours of operation. In the new mitigated negative declaration, it's shown to be 6 a.m. till 1 a.m. The applicant has told us that those hours include hours for staff working in the cafe to arrive, set up, and then clean up at the end of the night. So it's an absolute worst-case scenario for all the hours of operation that's been analyzed to ensure full disclosure and to ensure that we've analyzed not the best-case scenario, but the worst-case scenario. The multi-purpose room was previously described as being in operation on weekdays till 10 p.m. In the new description, it's clarified that it will operate at the most till 1 a.m. on weeknights and till 2 a.m. on weekends, and it would open presumably at 6 a.m. for cleaning staff to arrive. Office space, meeting rooms, and library space, those weren't called out individually. They're now called out in the recirculated MND. They're shown as operating from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. on weekdays and from 6 a.m. till 5 p.m. on weekends. Classrooms were not called out in the prior document. They're now identified as operating from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m., typically on Saturdays. The kitchen area was not called out in the prior M&D, and now it's shown to operate the same hours as the multi-purpose room, which is 6 a.m. till 1 a.m. on weekdays and 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. on weekends. They also reanalyzed the traffic trips, and that was part of the recalculation for the cafe, taking it as fast food, worst case scenario, and then also added in traffic trips for these additional hours of operation. So daily trips in a worst case scenario previously were identified as 680 trips. They're now identified in a worst case scenario as 1,140 trips. Those worst case scenarios typically occur during weekdays when the background traffic is the heaviest, mornings and evenings. As I said earlier, the Glendale Presbyterian Church submitted a comment letter regarding the environmental document. That comment letter essentially had 12 comments on what they believe to be inadequacies or shortcomings of the environmental document. In summary, they're recommending that the agency reject the mitigated negative declaration and require the applicant to complete an environmental impact report in its place. Staff believes that the mitigated neg dec is the appropriate document and is recommending approval. We've prepared, along with the consultant, a response to the comments. The comment letter from the Presbyterian Church is under tab 5 in your binder. The response to comments is under tab 6 in your binder. There's a lot in those binders. We tried to make it a little easier to use this time. I think the key, the critical piece in terms of what CEQA requires is, does the response to comments change any of the conclusions or create new significant impacts? And the answer is no. The conclusion is that although we've had issues raised, staff believes that the environmental document adequately analyzes those. And in the response to comments, the consultant goes on to clarify that analysis, but not to modify the analysis in terms of the conclusions or the impacts to the analysis. A complete copy of the environmental impact study is in your binder under tab, I think it's under tab 2. Mm-hmm. Tab 2. As I said, the project environmental consultant is here, the traffic consultant is here, core staff is here. We have planning staff as well as staff from Traffic and Transportation Department. Staff is recommending approval of the mitigated neg dec as presented to you today, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I have a question, and could you please tell us what is the standard regarding moving from a mitigated negative deck to a full EIR. There's a legal standard which is applied.
Perhaps our lawyers should answer that.
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, sorry, it was on. Mr. Chair, members of the agency, Chairperson Najarian, the standard is whether or not there's a fair argument in light of substantial evidence on the whole record, whether or not there may be a significant effect on the environment. And that would be a standard where you would be hearing whether or not there is that substantial evidence and making a determination of whether or not you believe that, based on that substantial evidence, looking at everything, that there may be a significant effect. So that would be, it's a very low threshold, so that would be where you would move from a mitigated negative declaration to a more detailed level of analysis in an EIR for purposes of determining those significant effects.
And when they use the word fair, is that a term of art or is that subject to common usage?
It is a little of both. It is a standard that is set forth in the guidelines for CEQA, in the definition of substantial evidence, and also in the case law for purposes of determining whether or not there is a potentially significant effect on the environment that needs further analysis and potential mitigation. The CEQA also instructs, while it's about public disclosure, it's also about whether or not the analysis that has been completed represents a good faith effort at studying all of the potential impacts that a project may have. And CEQA as well instructs that it does not require that every conceivable test or study be made for purposes of that determination.
Mr. Howard.
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, to provide a little more guidance, perhaps, the issue of substantial evidence. It is defined in CEQA. It's also known, essentially, that substantial evidence is that kind of evidence that you would rely on in conducting business in your day-to-day lives. It does not include conjecture or speculation. Certainly expert opinion from individuals who live in an area, who are familiar with, whether it be traffic, air quality, noise, etc. That can be substantial evidence. But you need to draw the distinction between what might be an impassioned plea based upon conjecture or emotion, as opposed to facts that you would use in guiding your everyday decisions.
Mr. Weaver.
As Mr. Howard, Mayor Najarian talked about a full-blown EIR. But if the concern mainly is traffic, would a focused EIR be the more appropriate vehicle if we went that way?
That is, yes. Certainly if that is the only area where there is a concern that is raised, that it could be focused specifically on the area where the impact is recognized.
What does that do to time and cost, generally speaking?
I can't speak to costs, although presumably when consultants are required to do further analysis, that will cost additional resources. However, in time, in terms of recirculation, it would require recirculation, and the minimum recirculation period is 30 days. And for a project like this, where there are not state agencies involved, such as Caltrans, for example, its potential, which would require a 45-day circulation period, it's conceivable that that recirculation would, in fact, be a 30-day period.
To phrase it another way, this whole environmental document, if it was a focused EIR, virtually the entire document would come back identical, except for that section on traffic, if it's focused. Is that...
You can't say that. That first of all, even if one characterizes the EIR as focused on traffic, that doesn't mean you don't analyze other impacts. Number one. Number two, you would treat an EIR, whether focused or otherwise, consistent with CEQA guidelines, which is you would have a scoping session. You would essentially go through the same process you would for any other EIR. So while the time for circulation is established by law and could be extended by the council, the time it takes to necessarily scope and prepare the document and analyze it is going to take some time. You're talking in the time frame a minimum of months. couldn't tell you how many months. Ms. Van Meiden can probably possibly give you some clarification, since she's actually been the attorney assigned specifically to this and knows the ins and outs of this particular
I know
review.
environmental documents, but if focused, I wouldn't see where we'd be changing air quality or noise or any of the others by further analysis on traffic.
It may not be, and the data that's in this mitigated neg deck may just be rolled over into the EIR, but I don't want to give you information that suggests that it's just merely just folding over these pages and retitling it. It is more extensive than that.
Oh, yes, I understand.
Is that it?
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'd like to ask the traffic consultant to come up.
Ms. Culhane.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you may want to consider opening the public hearing at this time for purposes of receiving testimony from consultants and from the public.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing. A question that was asked by my colleague, you were the consultant who dealt with the traffic analysis on this thing.
That's correct.
If this was a full-blown EIR or it was a neg deck, how much more your traffic study would be differ? The amount of study you did on a neg deck, is this normal for a neg deck, or it's more than normal for a neg deck, or it's less than normal?
This is typical for this
Neg
size
deck.
of project, yes.
Okay, so if this was a full-blown EIR, what else would you have done?
I would do exactly the same thing. The only thing I would add is if there was something from the public that needed to be addressed and the city deemed that appropriate, then I would add that.
And that's it?
That's it.
But your trip generation and all of those things, they will all stay constant?
Correct.
Okay.
Certainly. Liz Culhane with Overland Traffic Consultants.
Thank you. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the public, and thank you very much. And in case more questions are generated, we have all the consultants from Impact Sciences and the traffic here to answer some of those questions. And with that, I'll go to the first speaker, Margaret Hammond. 3 minutes.
Trying to get rid of me early, are you?
You came in early. Your card is first.
Margaret Hammond, and I'm speaking regarding mostly the parking problem and the traffic problem. But, you know, overall, the redevelopment money, I understood, was supposed to be used to improve the quality of life and community relations in a city. And I don't think that going the way it's going, that's going to happen. I think instead of that, two community groups have become adversaries. And a lot of it is because of the parking. And I'm positive it will only become more heated with the arrangements with the parking in that area. I mean, I said this before. You cannot give parking to the Royal Palace, Brand View collections, the public library. Did anybody go to the Circuit City and ask them what is their customer numbers during the day and later in the evening? Did anybody go to any of those retail people that I know, because I go to that place when I go with my grandson to that Circuit City and park in there? It's not an easy in and out. It's kind of constrained there as far as traffic in the street. I don't think that this is really a very good arrangement as far as parking. Again, I say, it's like having a single bed with 5 people in the one bed. And I'm wondering how much the retail will suffer from the all this usage of that particular parking structure. The other thing is regarding the setback on this, and you're going to have benches, and there was discussion of having a smoking area. I didn't hear that brought up. What about the smoking area? Is that smoking area going to be outside where those benches are? And if so, is that not adjacent to the church, whose perhaps the parishioners do not approve of smoking outside or near their church? And particularly, there's a school right across the street. I don't think that is a very nice way to have your neighbors, if you're having smoking next door to their buildings, that they're using. And as you all know, and I know very well, I happen to be allergic to smoke, and when it drifts, even from a distance, I have allergic problems. The other thing is, as far as alcohol, if there's going to be an alcohol permit allowed on this premises, again, across the school from the school and next door to the church. Many churches do not approve of alcohol, and they feel that this is an invasion of their rights. At any rate, thank you very much, and I appreciate your allowing me the input.
Thank you. Ken Baker. Reverend Ken Baker. Sorry, I forgot the Reverend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and agency members. I am Ken Baker, one of the pastors at Glendale Presbyterian Church, and we appreciate you hearing our concerns about the project once again. As we indicated in our comment letter of April the 24th, we have some concerns about the recirculated version of the mitigated negative declaration. We are concerned about particularly the traffic impact of this project, the trip generation. As was stated, the original mitigated negative declaration posited 680 daily trips. The recirculated version, 1,140. That doesn't sound like that much until you realize that on a yearly basis, and we figure that on the basis of 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. The original version, about 111,000 trips a year. The recirculated version, in other words, the updated version, almost 300,000, 296,000 trips a year. Our concern particularly is with the impact on traffic. Also, the fact that the recirculated version of the negative deck doesn't take into consideration any variation between those two levels of traffic in noise and air quality. And I would suggest to you that if the level of traffic around your homes or mine suddenly increased by 166%, in other words, 2.5 times the traffic, we definitely would notice a difference in the air quality and the noise. Just recently, we had a funeral at our sanctuary on a Saturday for a prominent local resident. It was neither the largest funeral we've ever had nor the smallest, but I can tell you that following that, as we tried to assemble for a cavalcade to Forest Lawn, there was absolutely gridlock on Louise Street. No emergency vehicles could have gotten access or egress for a period of time. This happens to be a time when we believe the society would be needing to use their facility and having people come for trips for various purposes. So we're particularly concerned about that. Again, with the parking exception, we're concerned about the impact on the church parking lot, which is used for various community uses as well as church events. The fact that we believe there are people who would well and understandably want to park there rather than going to the highest level of the Maryland garage. We continue to have these concerns. We appreciate you hearing them and giving us this chance to express them. Thanks very much.
Sir, thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Weaver.
I seem to recall that you said you either are or contemplating having other congregations use the church. We can't consider the future, but are there additional congregations now using it?
Yes, sir. There is an Arabic congregation that has been using this facility for many years. There have been several other congregations that have expressed interest within the last 2 or 3 months of operating in our facility. We're blessed with a very good centrally located facility, and so there are some discussions going on. We don't know where there will will lead. But at the time that I arrived, there were 5 congregations operating at 125 South Louise, and there is the possibility of more in the future.
All day long.
Not all day long. Obviously, Sunday morning is our prime time, but throughout the week there are various programs. Just last year we had 3 children's programs: Arabic, English, Armenian, operating on a Friday night. So there are times when we have particularly heavy usage of the facility, and we would anticipate that might happen again at some time in the future.
And that should all be factored in the current EIR that we have.
Well, we would hope. Thank you, sir.
I have a question. Are you currently operating under a conditional use permit that was given earlier on for the church?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Chair. I could look it up. We could get that answer back to you. I just don't have that specific information.
I think you should check with the planning department. Mr. Agani is sitting there. There's apparently a conditional use permit was granted for the church. All churches generally get a conditional use permit to operate in the city of Glendale. There are certain guidelines, the hours of operation, and so on and so forth. And generally, when you expand our operation and change what the original conditional use permit is done, it sometimes requires a hearing. So you may want to check with him before you go and expand your operation, so you don't end up in a violation somewhere down the line, and then some people start coming
Thank you for
on the
alerting.
dais. So I'm
Thank you
just
for
telling you in
alerting
advance.
us to that concern,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Steve Beebe. Steve Beebe? Your name for the record, please.
My name is Steve Beebe. Mr. Chair, members of the agency, this project has had problems all the way from its beginning. Incorrect assumptions at the beginning of the process have been followed by proposals and recommendations that are counter to logical thinking. Why would a nonprofit organization choose to spend millions of dollars to build a 27,000 square foot building in the heart of the city without planning to maximize its use and without plans for measured growth? Months ago, in discussions involving a couple of members of the redevelopment agency, it was admitted that the agency did not consider the fact that with a new location and $5 million in hand, the ASLA might develop plans for more than what they had at their brand location. It was said that this solution was the least expensive for the city, and that's completely inappropriate. There was no consideration that the ASLA might have functions involving the serving and consumption of alcohol, an issue that flies directly in the face of the spirit and the letter of state and local codes. I'm assuming that based on the historic information from the use at the brand facility, the ASLA has estimated the use of the new facility that develop into trip generations that fly below the radar of requiring a full EIR. There are no projections that I'm aware of for growth of the activities or service to the community in the coming 5 to 10 years, which leaves increased traffic congestion, parking and safety issues, and future trip generations completely unaddressed. Staff has made recommendations based on these estimates, and as well as the calculations for trip generations and parking needs that were supplied to them. But without taking into consideration the natural growth beyond the limited number in the negative declaration, the report and recommendations may be significantly flawed. Regarding parking and traffic issues, Mr. Weaver was quoted in an article in the news press today saying that we know there will be problems. He also says that we'll have to see how this works out. The poorly thought out decisions of the city have created a situation where conflicting uses are pitting neighbor against neighbor, and that shouldn't be. The city has a responsibility to its citizens not to do this, but to carefully plan and zone to bring conformity and compatibility to its neighborhoods. The choice of this location has created problems for both Glendale Presbyterian and the ASLA. The ASLA should not have to face the long, drawn-out process that it's gone through, and they shouldn't be without a facility for 2 years. It's already 2 years.
Mr. Beebe,
Thank
can
you.
you
Yes.
conclude briefly?
Yes. I'd like to challenge this body to think, are we really doing what's best for the city long-term and as a whole? And I don't think that pushing this project through solves any of these issues. It only guarantees that they're going to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Craig Hall.
Craig Hall, pastor of Glendale Presbyterian Church, members of the agency and staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Mr. Yusefian is called away. I might mention to him that church has been on that location for about a century and has a precedence of 24/7 usage that would be difficult to argue against, I would think. One of the facts of life in this day and age is that as congregations, particularly language congregations, emerge in an urban environment, they don't have the opportunity to acquire their own properties because of costs and the need to get permits, which are increasingly difficult, as you know, across this country to obtain. So the requirement for us to be open to that seems to be part of the nature of what it means to be an urban church. So we expect that indeed will be the character of our institution from now on, just to speak to that issue. Our concern with issues such as parking, traffic, and so on, well repeated. I think you have the documentation and you have our written arguments on that. Following the last meeting, you asked us to be in conversation with the society, and we have done that. We've found that to be productive. We are attempting to work together to some creative solution that will meet the needs of both institutions in a way that may go well beyond thinking within the box we've all been in. What I think we've discovered is that both institutions find themselves in a position neither one of us would have chosen. And we are working together to find a way past where we are. We appreciate our continued prerogative to appeal, but we would rather not do that. Our desire, and I say this on behalf of the board of the church, is to partner with the ASLA, to be their ally in attempting to help them meet the needs of their organization and their clients within the city, even as we set about to do the same for our institution. Where that will lead may be in some creative directions that may involve you at some point. We'll find out. But that is our desire. We will continue to be in conversation with them. We would rather walk that path than have to proceed in another way. So I simply want you to know that we have followed through on your suggestion, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Von Grigor.
Gentlemen, Your Honors.
Your name for the record, please.
Vaughn Greger. I'm chairman of the trustees of the Armenian Society. I hear a few things today that I would like to talk about. Parking, I don't see a problem at all because the parking that we have been promised is behind us, so the traffic would be behind us. Obviously, people would park there and come down to the place, so the movement of people and cars does not affect the project as such. Someone mentioned smoking. We have been in Glendale for 25 years in our old building, and we have had no smoking. Now, obviously, there are some members, whether they be church members or others, that smoke, and they go outside and have a smoke and come back. This happens in all organizations. But internally, we have no smoking. That also applies to alcohol. The alcohol that we're talking about, first of all, we haven't requested it anyway, but in the past, for the 25 years that we've been in Glendale, we have had no problems with alcohol. The police department has no records that indicate that we have had to call them for any problems. So we've been good citizens of the community. As far as church relations, I want to point out that our ancestors have embedded in us Christianity. We can't get away from that. So as far as the church is concerned, we're very friendly with them. As you know, 1,700 years ago, our nation became, or the Armenian nation became the first to accept Christianity. Now, that's not bragging or anything. It's just saying that, as I said before, this is embedded in us. So we can get along with people, and I see no problem in the future of getting along with our neighbors. We have had no problems in the past for parking. We have had no problem, neighborly problems with anybody. One of the things that's happened in the last few years that we lost our building. I say lost. I don't mean it in a bad sense, because obviously Glendale had to progress and have a center, and we're all for that. But we did lose a lot of capability because of losing our building. Our children have been left on Saturdays, really no place to have their classes, the musical programs, the cultural programs. Our elderly, our retired people, these are all problems we're faced in the last few years now, 3-4 years that we've lost the building. And that really shouldn't be. Remember, one of the things that we agreed with you was that this would be a seamless affair, and you would help us get settled in the new place. So I ask you to approve this as quickly as possible, and also to help us reestablish ourselves in this beautiful community of Glendale.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Armik Shahnazarian.
Good afternoon. I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from Armik? Hearing none, thank you. Boy, that was the shortest speech. Albert Abkarian. Any chances of a repeat?
Very likely. I'm also here just to answer any questions you might have. They told me that I have to fill out a card or I won't be able to speak. But as promised to everyone last time we were here, the attorneys stayed out, parties discussed a lot of different issues, and they have come to some understandings, but we still need to move forward. And I urge you, please, after 3 years, to let us move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa Ball. Your name for the record, please.
My name is Lisa Ball. I'm the postmaster of Glendale, and I'm here on behalf of the post office. And my concern, and as well as the post office, is the issue over parking. We are concerned that the additional 256 spaces that will be allotted for outside or off-site parking are going to be, that will have an adverse effect on our business and that of our employees as well. We also have, there's another project that's right across the street from us on Brand Boulevard that has upcoming retail and housing, and we realize that will be an impact too. But with this particular location, although there will be off-site parking, we often find that there will be many that will use the public street, and that will affect our customers. So we just ask if you could possibly, consider, or if there are any other alternatives to resolve the parking issue.
Just curiosity, I have a question.
Okay.
I know where the post office is. By the way, thank you for seeing the new.
Yeah, it does look pretty close. It looks familiar.
Yes, yes. You're on Broadway.
Yes.
And this one's all the way down, almost on Louise.
It's a block away.
Do you think people are going to park on the street and walk all the way across
They do.
Broadway to get to this when they have a parking structure right behind them?
They do. We don't have on-site parking for a lot of our customers, so they park on the street.
I understand that. What I'm trying to understand is people who are using this facility, why would they park on Broadway, cross Broadway, and walk all the way down to the facility, the Armenian Society facility, when they can just park on the structure right behind the facility and walk through the alley and they're right there?
This facility is located at 117 Louise, which is down the street from the post office.
Right, and there's a
post
parking
office-
structure behind it. And they're providing 270 parking in that structure.
My understanding is the parking is going to be at the public marketplace, which is located on Maryland. Is that correct?
Yeah, Maryland, but it backs with the alley to the center.
Okay. So we get parking from, not only from the apartment buildings that are located on Louise and Kenwood, and from the several churches that are located in our area. We encompass customers that park all along all along Broadway, Louise, and Kenwood. And parking has been a continuous problem for us for many years. So I would just like to stipulate.
Okay.
Okay?
Just so I understand, are you saying that your customers that would like to come to the post office would not be able to find open spots in the Maryland garage? Or are you saying that the street, I'm sorry to interrupt, or are you saying that the street parking will be taken by the members of the club?
Our experience is that even though that parking is available, that many customers will not use the towers for parking, that they will use the street instead.
And do we have a green curb, short-term parking in front of the post office currently?
And some portions, and some of it is red.
It's also metered, as I recall, in front of the post office.
It's metered.
On Broadway. Metered for short-term parking.
Right. Okay, and this is something, I don't want to get too far into it, but we've got the whole mobility plan and the parking issue, and we want to keep parking available as much as possible especially for a quick trip as the post office. Maybe there's something we can do. I know I have trouble parking there, even without any building on Louise, so that's perhaps something we can revisit.
Thank you
15 minutes, half an hour, whatever. By the way, you're here on an official, in your official, as official duties, capacity, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to do. Thank you.
You're
Thank you very much. It was nice meeting you, by the way.
Thank you.
I'll be there to buy more stamps.
I'll be waiting.
Before it goes up again. Juan Jimenez? Am I? Yes. Joanne?
Joan.
Joan?
Joan
I believe that might be me. I'm Joan
Joan
Humans.
Humans. Okay. Please,
Mr. Chairman,
your name
members of the
again.
committee. Joan Humans.
Okay, thank you.
Many of the questions I had have already been addressed, and I'm going to try to keep this brief. But I'm very concerned about the parking facilities that are being allocated in that Maryland building. Are these going to be reserved specifically for the ASL? Are they going to be validated?
First time, first serve.
All right,
First
so they're
come,
open
first-
to everybody. Is that correct?
And you have to pay.
And they have to pay. That's what I wanted to know. Is the society validating anything over there, or is this going to be just everybody's going to pay the market rate? I wanted to clarify that. Also, it was brought up that the peak rate usage was going to be about like 91%. Is this considering the Saturday and Sunday shopping that they have up in that area? I mean, that's when most of us do our shopping.
Quick answer is yes. I believe it is 1 to 5 on Saturday was the peak that they found.
Right.
1 to 5 on Saturday is the peak. How about Sundays?
Sunday was much.
Sunday the ads
much
come
more
out. I've
less
often
than
gone to Circuit City.
We just generally might say that the traffic consultant looks at the highest parking demand period, whatever that happens to be.
And that's the date. So
May I ask
shopping on Sundays is better than 1 to 5 on Saturdays.
May I ask how many parking places there are in this facility?
1,370.
1270, I believe,
1271?
somewhere close to 1,300.
Say roughly 1,300
71.
parking spaces.
Have the other merchants in there that use that facility been consulted at all? regarding the use of these 256 parking places are allocated? And are these aren't going to be reserved? You said it's going to be first come, first served.
No, it's first come, first served.
Have other merchants been considered at all in this allocation?
They're also on first come, first served, with the exception of recently we did one for Outback, I think, some reserve parking. for
Mr.
them.
Chairman, members of the agency, they did, when Parking, Traffic and Transportation did the study, they looked at all existing, it was done, the survey was done in December, when it would be at its peak demand. They looked at projecting forward for linens and things to reopen, as well as the Armenian Society. So yes, they did take into account all of the current users and future users.
May I just add one more thing? I know that the city has helped out ASL. We have a large Armenian community, but we also have other communities here, the Hispanic, Asian, we even have a growing Muslim community. Has anybody ever considered maybe doing something like for a group, for a community center that would cater to these other groups of people that we have?
I think what we are, what agency is doing, we are doing this, the only reason we're doing this, not to just help them, we're doing it as part of a relocation program, which is we had to do when we started the town center project. So that's the only reason they're here today. If their center was located on Central, and it was in Norton Park, and it did not include and the town center Galleria, we wouldn't even have this meeting.
But there still was a consideration by the city, is that correct?
Yes.
Consideration paid by the city?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
My
you.
time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last card, Leona Torosian. Oh, you enjoyed it last time so much, you came back, huh? Jeez. She needs to get some more camera time.
It's on.
It's on.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Dear Mayor and Council members, my name is Leona Torosian and I'm a student at the Armenian Society of Los Angeles Saturday School. I wanted to say welcome to our new mayor, Mayor Najarian, and to Mr. Draymond, our new council member. I came to this meeting a few weeks ago and read a letter about our Saturday school at the Armenian Society of Los Angeles. I went back to school very excited and told my classmates that we might have a new location and a new classroom. I am here today to let you know that all the students at the Armenian Society of Los Angeles Saturday schools are hoping to finally have a permanent location to have our Saturday classes, where to learn about our religion, our Armenian language, our heritage, and get tutoring in our day school work. For many years, we have moved around and didn't have a permanent location. We look forward to having a new location, a new place where my classmates and our parents can be a part of and call our new center. From all the students like me that are part of the Armenian Society of Los Angeles, we thank the city for their help and community for welcoming us. Thank you for your time.
I have a question.
Okay.
When you talked to your friends that you had come here and spoke, did your friends offer to also come back in here? All right. So you earned the bragging rights, is that it? Okay, I see. Thank you very much. Okay. Do my colleagues have any questions from any of the consultants? Okay, I hear none. The public hearing portion will be closed. Okay, and Mr. City Attorney, how do you intend for us to move forward? The way the business agenda is set up, start with environmental, then go to DRB, and then go to parking? Is that how you want to do this?
That's correct, Mr. Yusefian. The order as indicated in the agenda.
Okay, so, any comments? Mr. Weaver and Mr. Draymond. I'm having senior moment. I don't know what it is today with me. I needed more coffee, I guess.
So I'll make some comments. on the different phases. One, I did not vote to put the SLA here. I thought it was the wrong location to do it, but that's past tense. It's done. It is going to be here. My role today is look at saying that I have a mitigated negative declaration on a project that gives me adequate information to make an informed decision. I have to look at a design that we have seen has been modified that we think is a pretty good design at this time. And third, I have to look at the parking exception that we've already agreed to, in essence. I do have problems with some of the hours of operation, and City Attorney, if I understand correctly, if there to be any modifications to hours of operation, it would be in the parking exception. It would be done in that point, not in any other location. Is that true?
Members of the agency, Chairperson Weaver, the conditioning that you may place on the project would be in the parking exception, and that would have to have a nexus or connection with the parking exception itself. So for purposes of when that parking exception would be available for the use, that would be an appropriate place to put a condition.
That's the only place to do it.
That's correct.
Okay. And I was quoting the press as saying that there will be problems. And human nature being what it is, I think there will be. I'll give you a good analogy. You look at the parking lot behind Porto's Bakery or Damon's. I can go in that lot and I can watch people going around and around and around in circles for 15, 20 minutes trying to get a spot there. I look down a half a block to the Orange Street garage, which is sitting over half empty. Nobody wants to even walk a half a block. Yes, human nature being what it is, people will park on the streets. They will use up all the parking spaces. That's my bet. They'll eventually end up in the garage, because that'll be the only thing available. But that's just human nature, and we're going to have to deal with that. My concern is on here where they talk about some of the hours of operation. I don't think a cafeteria ought to be open till 1 in the morning, even if it is cleaning up. I don't know why cafeteria doesn't close 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. You're out of there by 7, 8 o'clock. I don't agree with the 1 o'clock cleanup, but I believe if it is a cafeteria and you're cooking any food, it'll be in the kitchen, which I think is on the 2nd floor, and it would have to be brought downstairs. So I have concerns with that. The other one I have concern with is the multipurpose room. It's going to be used for receptions, shows, show practices, and holiday celebrations. Yet they talk about having to be open to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., and I can't see that either. Why it would be that late. I do know I have gone to Armenian functions where they ask you to show up at 8 o'clock in the evening for the function. I show up at 8 o'clock, and I'm sitting there alone for about an hour, and the people start showing up at 9 o'clock, and the dinner is served at 10 o'clock. Now, if that's the scenario that's being played out, I would like to encourage them to please get the people to come a little earlier in the evening. I hate 10 o'clock dinners. I guess I'm old-fashioned. So it's the late operation hours. I cannot see it. The library is going to be open to 10 o'clock. I assume mainly it'll be used as meeting space to 10 o'clock. Now, if those are too long and if I wanted to change the hours that are identified in the report, do I have to do that in the parking exception, or can I do it, even if I had 2 other votes to go along with it?
Chairperson Weaver, that would be the location where you would place limitation on a condition limitation on the hours of operation.
That's my only objection. This is a done deal. It's going in. Again, I don't think it's the right location, but it's going to happen. I pray that the church and the ASLA can continue to work out their hours of operation. Additional congregations come in to use it. I hope they can work it all out. 5 of us will be sitting here watching it and having to react to what we see down there. Other than that, it's the hours of operation. And then just do a dose of praying that things do work out. Your turn.
Mr. Freeman.
Good afternoon. First of all, I wanted to say very intelligent questions asked. Thank you all for coming. Sort of coming in on the end of this as I am, just joining this group on this issue, sort of the last wave of the brakeman's hand on the last train out of town, so to speak. I share some of the concerns that my colleague, Mr. Weaver, expressed. I also need some guidance because I am not clear as to where I would place these questions. But I also have a concern about the hours and whether they are different weekday versus weekend, and the hall or the multipurpose room versus the cafe. So I have, I think we're being attacked.
No, may I just state, there's a fire in the Hollywood Hills.
That's coming over.
Sorry.
Mr. Najarian, there is a fire in Hollywood Hills in the city of L.A. You can pretty well see it from the westerly Chevy Chase area, but the wind is drifting this way and the ashes are falling as we speak. But L.A. City hasn't called for any mutual aid, so we're just standing by.
No.
The last report we had was there are no structures threatened. It's in the hillside areas, but no structures threatened. So that's been 30, 40 minutes ago.
I'm sorry, John.
That's quite all right. I would hope that if we had a fire out here, you'd certainly interrupt us.
That's why I went back to check.
Somebody's going to be leaving.
It's blowing.
I thought it was something I was doing here. So coming back to it, my concern relates to the hours for the cafe, the hours, or the cafeteria, the hours for the multi-purpose hall, and the hours on the weekend versus hours on weekdays. So I share that same concern, and some direction given to Mr. Weaver's concerns on that would also answer mine. I do have a question. Just what is, in terms of, can anybody tell me in terms of just number of feet between these two, between the church and this new building, which is a very good-looking building, by the way?
The buildings themselves?
Yes.
The setbacks.
This is 27,000 square feet. I don't know how big the church is.
You mean distance by which they're separated?
The building to building.
Actually, the church, as I correct me if I'm wrong, the church is a small parking lot right adjacent to this?
Yeah.
No, the administrative building. Just to the south of this proposed building, and I think the setback is a foot and a half.
1 foot 6 inches.
Agency member Draymond, the ASLA project is set back 1.5 feet from the church property line, so they have abutting property lines. The church building, I believe, is somewhere in excess of 10 feet from that property line.
You could see the church right there.
Well, we should note the administrative offices are a one-story structure, two-story structure, and then there's the large sanctuary building, I believe, which is a much taller building. I don't know what its equivalency is, but I think it's at least equivalent to 2 or 3 stories.
Okay. And then the issue is raised about an alcohol permit, and that they're not currently asking for such a thing. Just curious whether there's the anticipation that we'll be asking for such a thing.
Agency member Draymond, let me clarify your prior question. The church building is also 1.5 feet from the property line. So combined, it's a total of 3 feet, 1.5 feet on either property line.
What's the code requirement under downtown specific plan?
In this, there is no interior setback requirement.
Zero.
My question was not related to the code, by the way. It was related to the alcohol, actually.
Sure. Your second question regarding alcohol, the The Armenian Society of Los Angeles hasn't requested that in this application. If they do request it, it'll be subject to a conditional use permit, which would require a public hearing. So they've not expressed to us that they wish to have that. If they do, they'll have to apply for a conditional use permit and go through that process.
Thank you.
Mr. Najarian.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf.
It's the smoke.
Well, going through the list of items that we have before us, number one, I'll start with the easy ones. The design of the building, I believe, is appropriate, as I said before. The architect and the ASLA have gone a long way towards making it compatible. They're not building it as large as it could be. They're not going from lot line to lot line. They're even setting back in addition to what's required. I think it's a nice addition to the neighborhood. Second point is regarding the parking, and a lot of our issues, I think, are revolving around the parking and the traffic. The one good thing that we have in this situation, the actual configuration, is that the parking is going to all be accessed on the street west of Louise, off of Maryland. And I'm hoping that there will be very little traffic coming and going into front of the building. They've even designed it such there is a drop-off zone in the back. If I remember, there's a turnaround, a little horseshoe where folks can be dropped off. And I think the design of the building is such that it is encouraging that type of use to draw the vehicular entrance away from the front and towards the back where the parking is going to be available. I think that the peak parking evaluation is pretty much it's a technical subject that we've given to the consultant, and if it's 91%, that the addition of the parking here would still leave us with a 9% capability. I think that that's certainly sufficient. It is consistent with Glendale's plan to concentrate parking in one area and not have the cars spread throughout the neighborhood. The issue of the timing of the events, and it's a little unusual analysis. If we're concerned that it's going to be too late, let's say at 1 a.m. Was one of the times that was given, there really is going to be very little usage around that building at 1 a.m. The parking lot should be almost entirely free. I don't think there's any retail establishments that go anywhere near that late. I'm presuming that the church's activities are going to end much before 1 a.m., and there won't be any conflict in that regard. The only potential we see is, as the pastor indicated, for services or for larger events such as a funeral, a well-attended funeral and a procession. Those are typically during the afternoon and later morning hours. That's where we're going to see the conflict. So restricting the later hours of operation in the name of freeing up parking and traffic, I don't believe is really going to be solving the real issues where there's a potential of conflict. And I'm not sure how we can do that if it's a 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock peak usage. I think we're just going to have to hope that the folks from the ASLA, the members and the guests, will use the Maryland Street parking. It's really the most convenient, and I'm hoping that once they become accustomed to that, and we're even opening up a doorway, if I'm not mistaken, so they can park and just walk directly from the structure across the alley into the building. I think that will be quite sufficient. However, I want to say that I can understand the concerns of Pastor Hall and the congregation of the Presbyterian Church. It's all of a sudden there's a new use proposed where you once had a flat parking lot. There is going to be activity. There's going to be people coming and going, children coming and going. elderly, seniors, adults coming and going. And I want to say my wife does worship occasionally at the Presbyterian Church. The Presbyterians hold a close place in my heart. When my grandfather was orphaned in 1910, it was Presbyterian missionaries that came to his aid, taught him English, and cared for him and basically saved his life. I'm an optimist, and I really feel that once the two groups get to know each other, I know the ASLA, they are very good people. I know the Presbyterian congregation, you are very good people. Once you get used to past the initial hurdle of resistance of having a structure come up there, I am sure that you're going to really become best of friends. And as I understand, there's already discussions going on, cooperative negotiations. I don't know where that's going to lead, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I have nothing but faith, and without faith, where would we all be? We wouldn't be here without faith. I have faith that both of these fine organizations will be able to coexist peacefully. Each will have to make concessions to the other as the building gets underway, both on the ASLA, as on the Presbyterian Church side as well. But there's no doubt in my mind that coexistence is going to be possible, and it will be very successful.
Is there a motion somewhere? Mr. Quintero.
Yeah. Okay. I want to start by saying a few words, not just for the people in the audience, but also for the people who will be watching this broadcast at home. I started attending functions at the Armenian Society of L.A. back in the 1970s. I attended functions in the 80s, right into the 90s. They had a beautiful building, very well taken care of, very elegant on the inside. It was a very harmonious place to be. There was ample parking, et cetera, et cetera. And this nonprofit building and their land was taken away for a private development. It wasn't taken away for a park, or it wasn't taken away for public use. In fact, it was taken away for a private development. What should have been done was that next to the Best Western Hotel, there's a little recording studio. Next to that recording studio, this organization should have been given land so that they could stay in their general location. There would be ample parking in the public parking structure that the taxpayers are building for the town center. That would have been the ideal solution for the Armenian Society of Los Angeles. That was my idea. They were certainly interested in that. It never happened. It just never happened. Instead, they were given a public parking lot on a side street. It's a nice street, but it is on a side street. It wasn't on Brand Boulevard. It wasn't in the best location in the city. Instead, they were relegated to a side street. And now we have the accompanying issue of this long-established church having to work with the nonprofit next door. But like Mr. Najarian says, I think it will be worked out. I think this design is going to be a monument, and certainly the modern church next to it is a monument also. And I think in the long run, it's going to work out. I'm not concerned about the parking. The current parking structure is basically rarely used. From time to time on the weekends, we notice there's a few levels, but for the most part, it's empty, and I don't think there's going to be a real concern with parking. Some of the in and outs of people that may go to the society and the church is concerned with their parking lot across the street. That's certainly an issue that the church may have to deal with, and the society's members, and let's see where that goes. And I do agree there's going to be more issues with parking and certainly more traffic, but not to the extent where I think it's going to impact the operations of the church. I just don't think that. I just don't think that's going to happen. In terms of the length
of the operations in the evenings. My experience has always been during the weekdays, it's normally used for either lessons or small meetings, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that's going to change. The weekend operation, when there will be functions held at the meeting at the hall and so forth, I mean, people are going to gravitate to that parking structure. They're going to park, take the elevator, and go right across the alley to the Society's building. So overall, I just don't think you're going to have the impact that some people are thinking will take place. But it's been a very long road for an organization that did absolutely nothing wrong, that was there very happy. As you can see by the members that are here tonight, they've been through a lot of pressure. They've literally gone from one place to the other, losing membership along the way. And so it's time to finish this, have the building built, and let them get back to enjoying their association, and I think Glendale will be the better for it. But I just want to emphasize once again that they weren't given anything. This is no reward. They may have a beautiful building at the end, but they paid for it. They absolutely paid for it, and the type of pressure that they've been under and everything that's happened to them. They would have been, if you take a poll today, or if you take a poll tomorrow, or had you taken a poll a few years ago, they would have been very happy to stay exactly where they were. This was not their idea at all. So I hope we can just put it behind us, get to work, finish it up, and address the parking issues, especially with the parking lot across the street, the church's parking lot, and any other impact that the church is going to feel as a result of the building.
So is that motion on 6A1?
I'll move 6A1.
Second.
Is there a second? Roll call on 6A1.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian?
Aye. Is there a motion on 6A2?
I'll move 6A2.
Second.
6A2. Roll call.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian?
Aye, with the additional information that was given to us.
I'll move 6A3.
Second.
I gather there's no desire for adjusting times, right? Because it would take 3 to do it.
On 6A, and
let's clarify. When you talked about the cafeteria staying open till 1, let's clarify what exactly is going to happen in terms of I can't imagine the cafeteria staying open till 1. I think you mean the general purpose hall if there's an event, right?
I actually need to get some clarification. Who's going to be able to give this? Is it a consultant or is Mr. Shah Nazarian? Because I want to understand, generally in zoning, when we talk about hours of operation, we're talking about when the store opens and when the store closes, okay? We rarely write condition that says the guys are behind the scene cooking or cleaning or wiping the windows down. Those hours are not included. It's the hours of operations, it's the hour that the door opens and the door closes. So that's what I want to understand. So for the purpose of the EIR or the neg deck, from 6 a.m. till 1 a.m. the next day for the cafeteria. The purpose was to try to analyze the most possible scenario, or is this the hours of operation? And if it's not the hours of operation, could somebody tell me what the hours of operation is going to be?
Members of the agency, thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Your name again?
Albert Abkarian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yusefian. We were actually told for this negative EIR that we have to take the worst possible case scenario. If the cafeteria is going to open one day out of the year until 1 o'clock, then we have to say from 6 to 1. And the study was specifically geared on the worst possible case scenario if we open every day from 6 o'clock until 1 o'clock. Is this going to be the normal operations of the cafeteria? The answer is no. But we were asked to provide the worst possible case scenario, even if it opens one day from 6 to 1, that for the parking studies especially, we wanted to give you the worst possible case scenario. So would the cafeteria open at 6 o'clock? No. And we actually, doing at the parking study, I believe, we've only allowed employees of the cafeteria if they want to come in early, and that's why we said 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock is not the time that the cafeteria actually opens. It only includes the employees that are going to be there, and we were told to put the maximum possible hours so we can have the traffic study performed based on the maximum possible amount of hours, even if it opens one day from 6 to 1.
Just for clarification, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. You're using the word cafeteria. I think you mean cafe.
No, I didn't mean cafeteria. I apologize. I meant the cafe.
We were going on cafe, coffee.
Coffee, small teas,
Right.
small thing. There's not going to be a...
I understand, but I think that the intention was a cafe.
Cafe, not a cafeteria.
It's on the plans, cafeteria, it's in the report, cafeteria. So,
Will it be pheasant
wrong,
Jean?
and we ought to correct it.
Pheasant Jean will be served in the cafeteria?
So what I'm trying to understand, what is the hours of operation? Is it 7 a.m. till 10 p.m.? Is that generally the, because this is, Mr. Agani, correct me, this is in a zone that is a mixed-use zone? And could you come to the lectern, please? Code-wise, I'm trying to understand, if this was not the Armenian Society, if just a mixed-use project,
Correct.
and somebody built a cafe down there, or a cafeteria.
That's right.
Under the mixed-use guidelines, what would be the hours of operations that we will ask them to have?
The hours of operation that we would ask them to have the hour that they open until the hour that they close.
And what is generally allowed by code in this area?
I don't think we have any specific restrictions. This is in the DSP, Downtown Specific Plan area at this point. We have not put in any specific restrictions as to how late they can stay open. That's up to the discretion of the decision
And
authority.
in many cases, we do curtail hours of operations during a conditional use permit when they apply for alcohol use. That's when I have seen most of the times the hours be restricted, saying from this time to this time because you're serving alcohol.
That's accurate.
And since there is no alcohol in here, so if there was another business I think maybe next door on Maryland, there's several cafes out there. If they're not serving alcohol, if they have business till 2 or 3 in the morning, they can be open till 2 or 3 in the morning?
Unless its specific business has been specifically restricted as such, we have not put in restrictions for the DSP area because we want the DSP area to be active at night.
Okay. Mr. Weaver.
Question. If scenario, the building is built and the CUP is submitted for alcoholic beverages.
Yes.
And this has been approved with these hours, then if the CUP was granted, an ABC license was obtained, they could operate to the hours that are in this report.
At the time that the zoning administrator holds a ZA hearing for this conditional use permit, the zoning administrator can restrict the hours of operation based on the uses.
That would override what we see in the report.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Van Meiden, I see your head going up and down, but no voice comes out, so they can't record that.
I am acknowledging and confirming that that is accurate, that for purposes of conditioning the CUP, it is appropriate and typical that hours of operation would be considered and or limited.
It overrides this.
And it would, in fact, override that. It would be specific to the conditional use permit. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Draymond.
Now, my question is more general than that. Mr. Abkarian was talking about the exception. If I pick up the phone and I called the ASLA and I said, "What are your hours? What are the anticipated hours?" That's all I'm asking.
You're talking about the cafe or the actual organization itself?
Cafeteria. It's listed as cafeteria in here, but
cafeteria. Actually, we analyzed, the parking was analyzed as even a fast food restaurant, so to the maximum possible numbers. But I believe that there has. Go ahead, Armick.
The answer would be from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock max.
Thank you.
So the question is, would my colleagues would like to put that number in at this point with the parking exception?
It says
or would
hours
you
of
like
operation,
to
so-
wait until the CUP has been dealt with? I think it'll make things simpler if we just put that number in now.
Well, I think when the CUP, I mean, the CUP will not only deal with liquor, it's going to deal with hours of operation in general in terms of all of that. So I think that's the best time to do it.
That, if I can, that presumes they come in for a CUP.
Right.
There's no presumption they'll be in for a CUP.
But they don't. It says hours of operation, we just heard 7 to 10.
And that's the question. Do we really care if there is going to be somebody sitting there having a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, they'll be cited and driven out of
Well,
town.
when you talk about hours of operations, I see this building, on the one hand, it's an intellectual center with a library and certain functions going on there, and then at the other end, there's food being served and so forth. So we're talking about a building that has different uses. I want to be as flexible as possible.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Raymond.
No, that's right. I just wanted to say to the Chair that my concern just related to the anticipation that they may ask for alcoholic beverage. That's my only concern. And other than that, I just wanted to get into the record what the anticipated hours of operation are, so that if we get to that road down the line, we have something on the record.
Well, they got on the record.
And that's talking about the cafe. We're discussing the cafe right now.
And that's the extent of my concern.
And Mr. Lansdowne.
I would just tell you of a clarification I asked the city planner. During the CUP hearing for alcohol, the zoning administrator could limit hours of alcohol service or hours of operation, either or. So you could cut off alcohol service at a certain time and continue to serve coffee or food or something else. Or she could limit the hours of operation for everything to a time specific.
And undoubtedly, if that CUP is applied for, depending on the outcome of that, it will be in front of us down the line.
Could be, if it's appealed. All right. So, is there a motion? Is it a modified
Move
motion?
683.
Okay, there's a motion on 683. There's a second roll call.
They were already actually.
Second motion and a second.
We forgot, it's been so long.
As is.
Okay, as is?
Yes.
Okay. Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yousefi?
Aye. What's next, please?
At 6B is Director of Development Services regarding design review for rooftop telecommunications enclosures for property located at 1804 through 1806 Flower Street. At 6B1 is motion approving final design option number 2, Stage 2, rooftop telecommunications enclosures, subject to comments and conditions from the city's design review board.
Ladies and gentlemen, could you please keep it down? We still have a meeting going. Thank you very much for coming, by the way.
I move 6B1.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Was that staff?
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yousefi?
Aye. What's next, please? Oh, sorry. We had one card.
Downstairs.
Barry Frederick? Hello. Okay, just come up.
Okay, no question.
I haven't voted yet, so
Okay.
I guess they haven't got the roll.
Thank you for allowing me to come up. My name is Barry Frederick. I represent Royal Street Communications, and again, I'm here just to answer any questions or comments anyone may have.
Okay. Any questions from the gentleman? No. Continue roll call.
Chairman Yousefi?
Aye. Motion passes?
Yes.
What's next, please?
At 6 is Director of Development Services regarding professional services agreements with Kaiser Marston Associates, KMA, and Facility Operations Plus in connection with various projects. At C1 is motion approving change orders totaling $60,000 for the following firms: Kaiser Marston Associates, KMA, Agency Development Site, Wilson and Maryland, in the amount of $10,000, DPSS in the amount of $20,000, Maryland Park BMW Joint Use in the amount of $15,000, Contractual Services in the amount of $10,000, Facility Operations Plus for a Town Center Project, Americana at Brand, in the amount of $5,000.
Move 61.
Second.
There's a motion, second roll call.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yousefi?
Aye.
Is there any member or staff comments?
Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.